Hi, everyone. Hi, Yamalé.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Hi, Mary.
So today we have a very special group joining us for this episode, and their name is Yamalé. Yamalé is a group of very important people who are doing very important work in Kenya. So they are in the legal profession, and they are formed by USAID employees. And I will tell you how I discovered them. So, as many people know, I do a lot of content on LinkedIn, and we have a lot of topics about Africa. I'm everywhere, whether it's mining, agriculture, whatever. And I remember seeing a comment by someone called Meghan Waters, and I found that comment a bit different because she is a person of European descent, and I saw her speaking very confidently about the topic. The topic was about Africa, and I thought, hey, let me see what they're saying because she was saying all the right things. So I thought, let me just check, and I clicked on her page. I saw where Meghan Waters works. Then I went directly to their website. This is something I do a lot, being a content person and also being a person who loves Africa. I love to see who's working with Africa. So I went to the website and I discovered, oh, this is such a huge team, number one. The leader is an African man, I noticed. Then I saw a lot of African people, and I was like, okay, this is leading somewhere, and I'm feeling more, because at first I was like, okay, well, how do you know so much about Africa? You're so confident. So I saw this huge team of people, African people, people of European descent. Obviously, I didn't know what countries they came from, and then I just read a bit more, and I realized, oh, okay. So they are in the legal profession. They're also working with Africa, and they've also, some of them have worked with USAID. And I thought, okay, maybe we need to have a discussion. And that's how I got to speak into them. And immediately I contacted them through LinkedIn. And very quickly we set up a meeting and I met a bunch of them. And that's why we are here today. So today we are going to be speaking about Yamalé and what they are doing in Africa. And I will give another foundation for why I decided to do this interview. We have had very many episodes before where we speak about what we want for Africa, what has happened to Africa in the past. And usually it's African people. And this is very intentional. I usually have African people because we are the ones who should decide what we want for our continent. And I thought to myself, maybe this should be an opportunity where we can show how we work with other people. Because decoloniality is not about working by ourselves or living in exclusion. It's about coming together, but making sure that the terms we've used before are no longer the thing. So it's about changing the way we relate with one another. It's about changing the terms of agreement, the way we interact with one another, the way we solve together, and also making sure that African people are centered. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to show people through Yamalé how you work together as such a diverse group and as such an experienced group, because you know so much about the development sector, but you're not really in the development sector. So I want people to kind of see also as well how you've been able to transition from what we know as development work into what you are doing now. And this is where I want you to be able to speak for yourselves and tell us what you are doing. And so let's just learn what you're doing and how you're working together. And if, as you have told me, you are working in a way that is different from what we have seen before, then we need to see that, but we also need to hear it from you directly. So I think I will start by asking Hawa to introduce to us herself, your name, your work, and also give us a brief overview about what inspired this organization. What kind of organization are you? What do you do? And how do you work together with such a diverse team? And why? This is very important. Why do we have people who are not African working on the team?
Sure.
So kind of just introduce us. Welcome, Hawa.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for having us today. My name is Hawa Ka. I'm from Senegal, and I'm currently based in Dakar. I'm the CTO for Yamalé. I'm going to start with what Yamalé means. Yamalé is a Wolof word, and it means, equal footing, making everything equal, Yamalé. And so hence our name, because our goal is to have all 54 countries be able to negotiate and trade on equal footing with partners, individuals around the world. That's our purpose, right? Sitting on the table, having the information they need, and being able to negotiate from someone from France or the UK or Kenya on equal footing, having the same information. That's in a summary what we are about. But then we realized that in order to do that, there are things that we need to address, right? The legal infrastructure in Africa needs to be looked at. The systems that we have need to be looked at. And so we were like, okay, that's where we are going to bring our support, right? When governments are negotiating, we will bring the infrastructure that is needed. When communities are being exploited, we will train them in the legal framework under which their partners should operate. But since we want to have those tools, we decided, okay, so this is going to be our baseline. So we are going to build it for everyone. So in addition to that vision of supporting people, organizations, governments, we decided to build also a platform where those basic tools, that legal framework, can be developed. So that's Yamalé in a nutshell. And so what we bring to the table, that's what we bring to the table. How we came together, you're right, we all are from USAID, but I'm gonna tell you about two things we're bringing with us and that brought us together. We have a sense of purpose, right? Meghan and Andrea are lawyers. They could have gone and gotten other jobs in New York or whatever. But what USAID has really brought, what made us work for USAID was that sense of purpose, and that's what we keep today. We don't want to work for the sake of working. We want to do work that serves people. The other thing that we're bringing with us is this, the experience we've had working for USAID. Meghan and Andrea were contracting officers, so they have been in the corners of governments, of local organizations, of communities, and they have been on the ground. Same for me. I've held multiple positions at USAID, but I've always approached my work as a customer service job, be it when developing tools for USAID or just being program development work. My purpose is always who am I serving and what is the end result. So I think that's what brings us together. I will add also that in my experience at USAID, I used to always, I'll be in a meeting and they'll bring someone and they will say, oh, this person is an African expert. And I'll be like, what does that even mean? Africa has like 54 countries. What makes you an expert on Africa? I am Senegalese. I'm not even an expert in Senegal. What is this, right? And then what I have learned is what we need is people who have experienced Africa, have lived here, have worked with its people, are bringing a different perspective, but are also learning from the continent. And I think that's what I have in my team. They have lived here, they have worked here. They currently live and work here. Their families are here. And we have the same purpose. So that's what's bring us together.
Wow.
Over.
Thank you. Thank you, Hawa. And did you tell us what your position in the company is?
Oh, I'm the CTO of the company.
Okay. So you're the tech person as well.
I am looking after this platform, yes.
Amazing. Because I'm going to be coming to you with the tech question later.
Sure.
Thank you so much for giving us the overview on your company and how you came together. Now I would want for everyone else to introduce themselves. Just tell us a brief, short history about yourselves, how you got to Africa, and how you stayed in Africa. So do we start with the CEO or the COO?
Go ahead, Andrea.
Oh man. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary, for having us. We're really excited to have this chat with you. So I'm Andrea Capellán. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Yamalé. I am super excited to be a part of this woman-led team. It's been an incredible journey, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I ended up here. And so I started working in international development about 20 years ago when I joined the Peace Corps, and I lived and worked on the ground. And from that point, I ended up going to law school and joining USAID. My first tour was in Dakar, Senegal, where I met Hawa about 15 years ago. And I loved living there. That was my first experience in Africa. West Africa was amazing. I learned so much about so many new things. And then I went back to Latin America for 10 years. And so I've spent about 10 years in Latin America and 15 years just in the global South in general. So I do think there's a lot of similarities. I eventually made my way back. I'm in Southern Africa in Lusaka, Zambia now, here with my family. I've been here for about a year, and I'm learning all sorts of new things. But one of the things I did learn moving around is that there are a lot of differences and a lot of unique things, but that can go into an indefinite spiral where, yeah, everything's different, all the way down from like countries to states to tribes to communities. But there's also like a lot of similarities with countries that are in the process of development. And so there are a lot of things I can bring from my experience in Latin America. But there's also just understanding that there are so many distinctions, I think, is a really important thing to understand when you're working in a place like Africa, understanding that you don't know what you don't know. And so I feel like we all come from that perspective. We're looking at Africa pan-continentally across all of these countries, but with the understanding that there are so many distinct communities, differences that affect the legal framework, that affect the people that we're going to be working with, that affect languages that we're going to be using. And so I think all three of us and all of our team, from the board of directors down to our communications person, understand that. And I think that's a really important perspective that we all bring. I think I'll stop there unless you have any specific questions.
Thank you, Andrea. We are going to have a lot of questions for you later. And I think this kind of gives everyone an idea of what you're doing, why you're doing it, where you are. So it's we are seeing that the diversity is not just, in the nationalities and the cultures. It's also like where you are based. And I love this. So we have Senegal, we have Zambia. And I think now we want to hear from Meghan.
Yeah, so great. Thank you. So I'm Meghan Waters. I'm the CEO of Yamalé. I also am based in Dakar, Senegal. My story is sort of a mix of these two. I, like Andrea, have hopped around a lot between Latin America and Africa. I went to law school in the United States. I then, straight out of law school, worked at a large law firm in Colombia, one of the top firms there. I was sort of brought in and trained in the legal space in Colombia, which has a lot of parallels to what we're doing now, honestly, and I bring that experience with me as well. I then worked in the Gambia. I started an NGO there when Yahya Jammeh was the president and had been an authoritarian president for almost 2 decades. And we were working on rule of law and access to justice there. I was working with a Gambian. I had worked also at the Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in Tanzania. My boss there was Gambian. He brought me to the Gambia. As you can imagine, doing work like that under an authoritarian regime was quite challenging, especially in a small country where it's easy to sort of track your whereabouts all the time. I taught at the University of the Gambia there in the law school, met a ton of law students, did a lot of research with them. We did a lot of up-country visits and sort of village by village rule of law surveys, which was super interesting. I kind of fell in love with the continent wholeheartedly there. Also met my husband there, who's actually Senegalese, which is why I live in Senegal. He and I got married while I was in the Gambia, went back to Colombia, came back, went to the United States, was in Peru. Then I was in Uganda for USAID, where I worked as a contracting officer. And now we've relocated back to Senegal. In the midst of all of that, I also worked for over about a year here at DLA Piper Africa, which is Jenny and Kebe. It's a large law firm here in Senegal, one of the top law firms. And my managing partner was Mohamed Kebe. He is a fantastically talented attorney. I worked very closely with him, mostly on extractive industries work. So we did Senegal's first oil contracts and agreements and everything related to their oil extraction. I worked on several mining agreements and also in mergers and acquisitions with large companies that were moving into the West Africa area. Mohammed works all over Africa, but particularly all over West Africa. And so I learned a lot about the sort of Pan-Africanism of law, of the legal space from him. And he and I, in representing clients, often thought, we're doing a really great job for Western companies. This is great that we're as lawyers doing an exceptional job and getting them really good deals, but are we getting good deals for our countries? And I think Mohammed particularly, because he's Senegalese, it was hard for him to swallow all the time of how good he was doing at sort of, I won't say hurting his country, but at getting a better deal for the company than for what his country was getting. And so the idea of Yamalé sort of formulated in that period, and he and I kept working together and stayed in contact throughout the time I was at USAID, and decided to start Yamalé after I left USAID. With that idea of let's start with the government representation. And then as Hawa said, it kind of flourished into more. And I would just say that Yamalé is born a lot out of, I'd say almost like frustrations I had all along the way, not just in Senegal, in the Gambia, in Uganda, in Colombia. A lot of, from what I learned in Colombia, of why in Colombia you always rely on a New York lawyer. In Senegal, you always rely on a French lawyer. In British colonies, you're always relying on an English lawyer. There's always in a major multinational transaction, there is always a European or an American attorney at the lead. And and I say we because I always worked sort of on the other side in the actual local firms. We're always like an afterthought. Let me add that person in Senegal, even though the entire transaction is for Senegal. And so we should be leading. And I truly believe we should be leading. I think law shouldn't be so hard to access, which is something I learned a lot in the Gambia. And so a lot of this is just sort of built out of my frustration in wanting to solve the problems that I had while I was actually practicing on the continent.
Amazing. You know what? I didn't know that you've been, we've spoken before, but I think every time I've spoken to you, I'm a bit more surprised that you've done so much and you know so many people. And we're going to come to your teaching experience in the law schools in African nations. But I think before we go there, I want to, because that could take all day. But I want to know I want an overview of the economic growth plans you have for Africa, because you have been in these spaces where people are signing deals. And as you said, you can see who's getting the raw deal. You can see how much better we should be doing as African nations. So I want to know from you, what has changed now? What is Yamalé doing differently? What are those things you imagined or wanted to do that you're able to do now? What should we do as African nations to grow economically?
Yeah. So I'd say the number one thing is a mindset shift. I like to say that the United States is not better at things than everyone else. We've just done a better propaganda to make everyone believe that in their hearts, that we are better on their heads. And I think if there could be a mindset shift in Africa, it would make huge change across the entire continent. From a Yamalé perspective, we're giving back that power to African businesses and lawyers particularly. If I could have one wish from Yamalé, it's that I wish that all of the attorneys across the entire continent could realize they don't need the British, the French, they don't need the American attorneys to be supporting them on these things. They need each other to be supporting. And like Andrea said, we are very aware that all 54 countries are very unique, but at the same time, there's a lot more similarity between the countries on the continent than there is between the countries and some European firm that's working with them. And what I mean by that is, for example, one of the reasons here in Senegal we had to use a British law firm as the lead on the oil transaction was because Senegal had never had oil before. This was a new thing for them. So because of that, you know, there's very few attorneys that are trained in that space here in Senegal. But instead of turning to the UK, we could have turned to Nigeria, where we all know they have a tremendous amount of experience, or Kenya, or Uganda, or many countries across Africa have experience in this. And so I would have loved to see, you know, Mohammed saying to me, hey, we're going to contract with this Kenyan law firm on this because they really have the experience in this and they can teach us.
Yeah.
And so Yamalé is trying to teach the attorneys these new areas, so that we don't have to rely so much on the outside, but also trying to create a network of attorneys across the continent that lets them support one another.
Okay.
And that, I think, from an economic growth perspective, I think that can do more than anything for business, quite honestly, because it keeps business here. Yeah. Africa is the richest continent in the world. Yeah. It has everything. It has all the resources that the entire rest of the world needs. And so if businesses and lawyers could switch their mindset to say, yes, we own this and we're going to negotiate from that position of power instead of a position of what can you give us, then it would change the entire economic landscape of the continent.
Amazing. I want to touch on what you said about how you would have wanted to partner with African nations instead. And what I'm thinking is that, of course, you want to go to a place where there's been, you know, much more experience. They've been doing it for a longer time. But what do you think are the other barriers? What do you think really prevents us from working together between African nations? What prevents us from doing it? And I think Andrea should. Maybe Andrea should answer this, because I want to understand what structures, because I don't work in that space. What are the barriers? What are the structural barriers we have within different African nations that are preventing us from simply just doing it? The way you go to the UK, others go to France. So what is preventing us from doing that? The cooperation.
Thanks, Mary. I think there's a couple things. So one, I think is the most obvious, is language. There's a language barrier, especially with the French African nations versus the English-speaking African nations, and then the Portuguese-speaking African nations. But I do think that barrier is becoming lower and lower. People are becoming more adept at learning other languages or knowing those earlier in school. Also now with all the technology that's available, it's so easy to put an email in one language into Claude and then get it out in another language, and you can have a whole conversation like that without any issues. And so I do think that barrier is kind of coming down. The other thing is something that Meghan alluded to. We feel like there are very many cultural differences or norms that you don't understand, or you can't possibly understand the entire legal structure of another country. And that's one of the things that we're trying to address. No, like, we can give you a quick guide. There are very many similarities. Everyone has, you know, an investment code. Like, you can look at the investment code of another law the same way you're reading the one of your country, right? Like, you're just as capable of dealing in those multiple jurisdictions, and giving people the confidence to understand that they can understand these other jurisdictions, and it's not as different as you think. Again, there's more in common across the African borders than there is with Africa versus Europe or Africa versus the United States. They can work better together than they probably think they can do. And so, and understanding that there are all these other attorneys that are out there doing the same thing that you are. And so just giving them access to names and networks and a community where they can pull that from makes it feel much tighter and more possible, I guess. And so those are the things that come to me off the top of my head that we're trying to work on with Yamalé.
Okay, and I'm going to ask another question to you still, Andrea. When I look, because I live in Finland, and I see how, for example, the Nordic countries work together and why things work for them when they work together. And I'm wondering, is there something we can learn from the way European nations work together or Western nations work together? Even, for example, the UK and Australia, they work very well together. Are there lessons we need to learn from that? And do you think you carry these lessons? Is this something that you can bring to us as an African continent, to the African continent?
I think that's a really tough question, but it is something that we are working on. I think one great example is the EU and a common currency and how that could totally change the economies of some of the countries in the EU. And it's something that we as a business struggle with a lot. And I think also doing cross-border transactions is really hard when you have so many different currencies. And so that's why, for example, some of the West African countries tend to do more business with each other when they have the CFA, and they're all working together with a similar currency. And so again, I think technology is breaking down these barriers. There's more and more payment platforms. There's more and more enabling regulations. And there's also moves towards blockchain technology that would allow people to come away from a currency. And so again, it's a challenge for sure, but I think there are lessons that we can learn from other nations working together for sure. And we're just on a bigger scale because there's so many countries, right? And so it's easier to do like a bilateral agreement than it is to do a 54 or 55 country agreement, right? And so trying to figure out how to scale those smaller agreements on Africa, I think is something that everybody is struggling with. And you can see it with the African Free Trade Agreement and trying to move implementation with that.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned currency, because this is something that many people say, and I don't think people understand how serious this is, and it makes things so much easier. But then again, I'm also thinking about Finland. Finland uses the euro, but Sweden doesn't. They have the Swedish krona. Norway has the Norwegian krona. But still there are systems that are very similar. They've worked on the system. They didn't just happen to make sure that it's easy for me to do this with my partners in the neighboring country. But now I want to move. We kind of understand what the difficulties are, but I want to hear from Hawa. The technological hurdles you've encountered yourself while building your own organization. What are the tech issues you face? Because I know, I'm sure there are many, but we want to hear from you and how also you've overcome them.
Thanks, Mary. I think one of the, even like before talking about the ones that we encountered building the platform, I think the biggest challenge Africa has right now is with digitalization. I don't know what I'm saying, you know. So you go to a very important law firm or organization that is, you know, local, they still have, you know, physical folders all over. With important information. If you need something, someone has to go and dig it out. And, you know, something that should take 1 minute ends up taking a day. I think if we solve that problem, a huge problem will be resolved. And so that also affects the laws that we wanted in the database, right? Everything is scattered or it's not online, right? So just building that database and making sure all the laws are there and getting them from, you know, a person or like a faded out PDF online or, you know, newspaper that they had published a long time ago was very super challenging, still very challenging. Or like just because it's not the presence online is not that strong. Just knowing that, this was the amendment from 1988. Oh, there was actually another one between 1998 and 2000. You know, just dating these occurrences. So those are like some of the challenges. Or like, you know, you're super focused on your country, you haven't opened out to the world. So your, you know, all your laws are in Arabic or Amharic, you know, it's very difficult to find the English version that you could actually, you know, share across the world and have other people know about. So those are like one of the biggest challenges. And we are very proud of the work we have done, just, you know, taking those laws and putting them online. Huge undertaking. The other thing I think has already been covered, which is just finding the appropriate payment system so that wherever you are around the world, you can actually make a payment when needed, right? And that the challenge over there is on that side is twofold. One is that we actually need to accommodate mobile wallets because that's what we use in Africa, right? And there are so many of them.
Yes.
So many of them per country, right? So very, very big undertaking. And then the second challenge that is related to that, actually, even just knowing who is in the market offering those services so that we can be in touch with them, collaborate with them, has been also challenging. So, and then I think also going back to what Yamalé operate and what we believe in, we absolutely want to work with people in Africa. We don't want to go and sign with MasterCard or, some other organization. We want to source things locally, and that also presents its own challenges.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. I'm just wondering, what do you think is the greatest barrier to us getting to the tech, getting the tech development that we need to be able to do our work? Do you think it's lack of investment? Is it culture? Is it attitude? What difficulties do you see in trying to change things?
I think it's really embracing technology. Technology is becoming cheaper, more accessible, and yet it's not used as as broadly as it should be.
Yeah.
Be it law firms or if I look at people around me, and I do consider myself, even though I've done a lot of work in IT, I consider myself to be a late adopter.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's like 10 times worse. I told you about the problem I saw in offices. Like I remember going to the Ministry of Finance many years ago. Maybe it has changed, right? And then paperwork just everywhere. I mean, the guy is sitting in his office and there's just folders everywhere. You can barely see the laptop is working. It's like, and I'm like, this is so terrifying to me, right? I think adoption of just technology, people are set in their ways, and then just bringing change management. I think we have to keep talking about how it saves them time, how it gives them more reach, right? And then continue that messaging. And I think that we're heading there. I think that there is definitely a need, a desire to be more efficient. There is a desire to, be out there in the world, and you cannot be out there in the world if you're operating the way you're currently operating. Your capacity to grow is just limited if you don't adopt some of these tools, I believe.
Hey Mary, can I add one more thing really quickly, just from like multiple conversations that we've had? I think trust is the number one thing that is missing in all of these conversations, because of many reasons, and I'm not a historian and I'm not an expert on Africa, and so I will not begin to delve into this, but there is a genuine mistrust of when I go to, I'll use Senegal, Gambia as an example. When I go to a Gambian lawyer and I say, come work with the Senegalese, they're doing this great thing on this. No, we don't work with, like, that's not a thing. I don't want to do that, or vice versa. And I saw the same thing in Kenya and Uganda. I saw every time we said to the Ugandans, oh, but there's this great technology over in Nairobi. Maybe we should look at bringing that here. Oh, no. And so there's like this, but yet when I say, oh, maybe we should call a British lawyer, oh, yes, let's definitely call the British lawyer. There's that trust there. Mm-hmm. And so I would, it's a trust, and I have no way to explain it, but I would say underneath all of this, underneath the currency, underneath the technology, underneath all of it in Africa is trust.
Thank you for saying that, because you know what, I was probably going to say it myself, because I was born and raised in Kenya, and I also work with a lot of African people. I'm an immigrant in Finland. In my work as well, I speak to a lot of Africans, and I do know that it's not simply that we do not have these technologies. There's also the thing where we are afraid of trying something new. At the same time, we are such ambitious people. We're the kind of people who, when you come to us, you say, you know what? yes, I know you want to try something new, but you know what? It's going to do this and this and this and this for you. Then we're like, okay, our eyes light up. We're like, okay, let's try it. So I thank you so much for talking about the trust, because I think it's one of the factors why we are not doing what we need to do together. And I think it's going to be, it's, we see what's happening in South Africa. That shows that we don't have trust. But I also have to be honest, because I live in a country where the structures actually work. I know it's not just because people don't trust each other. I know there's xenophobia, 100%, but I know there's more to that. There's people being afraid of one another. And even when you mentioned how easy it is for us to trust people outside the African continent, I've seen it. In Kenya, a fellow Kenyan wants to do something, you're like, okay, yeah, but yeah, something from Europe, oh yeah, that's good quality, that's amazing quality, and there's trust, and we need to change that. And now I want to ask you, Meghan, because you're in these spaces with people, impressionable people, young people who are learning and unlearning at the same time, and you are from a very different part of the world. I want to know what your experience has been, and before we even get there, after that, I also want to know how you decided to shift from the development sector, how comfortable you feel, but I want to know your education, your experience educating young people. How has it been?
Yeah, so I have lots of different random teaching experiences, but I'll talk to my teaching experience in the Gambia. I think teaching at the University of the Gambia is what gave me my passion in so many different areas, but particularly in believing in Africa and believing in that there are so many endless possibilities here, because my students, our university was not, anyone who's in the Gambia will tell you the University of the Gambia is not, Harvard. It does not have all the resources. We often taught without lights on. And things have improved and changed. This is a decade ago, so things have improved a bit, but we didn't have running water. We didn't have lights a lot of time. We were getting zero resources basically from the government, and it's a public university. And so we made do. We didn't have textbooks, so I would give them printed out things, or we would read online a lot, and we made do. But the relentless passion of the students that I had was so contagious. It was like they were determined to get that law degree and to utilize it for something of good. And I said this the other day in a meeting. We graduated, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 100 students, depended on the class, every year. And I'd say about 90% of all of them wanted to be human rights lawyers. And I think one of the things I tried to instill in them was, not everyone can be a human rights lawyer. It's great that we all want to fight for human rights, but not everyone can do that. But at the same time, there's something so admirable about that desire. It's like they wanted to be lawyers because they saw the injustice, and they wanted to use that law degree that they were going to work as hard as they needed to get in order to help, even if it was just their communities. And like I said, I went up country. We did this thing for UNDP where we went sort of village by village, surveying Gambians on their legal knowledge, just to see, do Gambians understand the law that governs them? And I did each trip with a different group of students, and I stayed in their, in their towns and their villages, and every single student had a story when I went to their village about, this is the guy who told me I should be a lawyer. This is the woman who I saw struggling, and I want to be a lawyer because I want to help her. One guy told me how he sold milk on his way to go to his grade school so that he could raise the money in the back end to be ready to go to university later. It was like seeing it with my own eyes in the village with the students and where their passion was coming from changed everything. And I think you see that across the continent. I've lived in Tanzania and Uganda, Gambia, Senegal. In every country I've been in, you see that passion. There's a raw passion of the youth in this continent that is infectious. And I think from an economic perspective, there's more innovation here than you're going to see anywhere else in the world. This is the continent of innovation, and it doesn't matter. I had a conversation with a guy last week who's building an Africa AI system on his cell phone. Our developer from Mombasa was like, he asked him 3 separate times, So when you say cell phone, you mean like just your phone. You're not connecting it to, and the guy was like, yeah, I don't have the money for a laptop, so I'm just building this whole system on my phone. And our developer, again, who's Kenyan, was like, whoa, like that's crazy that you're doing that. But this is the only continent that happens. I lived extensively in Latin America. There's so many similarities between Latin America and Africa, but the one thing that really sets Africa apart is this like relentless innovation and desire to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Wow.
I'd like to add on to that. I think it's so interesting when we talk about like the technology issues and the things that we face. And you'll have people, I've got people all the time commenting on my LinkedIn comments about Africa, and they're like, yeah, but Africa has nothing. They have nothing to offer. They don't have the, you know, the industry, they don't have the factories. But like, if you look at mobile money as like a case study, mobile money like is from Africa. It took off like nothing else, and innovation has been spurred from that mobile money, and it's all like focused on the continent. Like it all started here, it's moving out, but that was something that showed what is possible here and how amazing and all the different things you can do from that, from remittances from the diaspora all the way up to, you know, being able to tackle like large problems in a country based on the ability to have money change hands, you know, when people weren't using banks. Like, and that was, it arose because of a problem in Africa that was solved by Africans, and it is now in a million different forms. It wasn't one guy who figured that out. It was a whole community of entrepreneurs that used that and took that off. So the irony of like the tech problems here is because maybe there's not electricity in a lot of places, or the government services for internet aren't available. But it's not because the Africans can't use it and don't want to use it and aren't able or capable to make it happen. And so I think, you know, all of that stuff is just it's so interesting. It's such an interesting place to work because of the, you know, these ideas. And like Meghan said, the infectious, like, you know, drive to move forward.
Yeah. And you know what? Thank you for mentioning mobile money, because I'm from Kenya. And if I do not mention Kenya and associate us with that, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So we need to talk about that. So we give credit to Kenya with M-Pesa. And I think I want us to speak a bit more about that. Because you're working with so many countries, and the issues you're telling me are very general. But I want us to go with you, Andrea. I want us to go to specifics. I want to know some of the challenges you've faced in your role as a CEO, or just generally as an organization. I want to speak, let's speak about specific nations. Now we have mobile money. We know Kenya started this and what we can learn from Kenya. We've spoken before. You've said amazing things about what Kenya is doing, but I want people to hear from you. Pick a nation, tell us what we could learn from them and how we can learn from them.
Sure. So let's talk about Zambia, because that's where I am right now. I have been here for a year. I've learned a little bit about the culture and the country. I've learned that in Zambia, there are so many tribes that get along really well together. There are a ton of different languages that are used. And there are very many people who don't speak English, but get around, you know, just fine with Nyanja in Lusaka. And so I've tried to pick up a teeny bit of Nyanja, but it's not really a written language. And so one of the things that I think about when I think about how can we, you know, go village to village virtually and talk to people about how to access laws and how they can use them in their favor, I think about, oh, well, I can't just turn a guide that we have in English, French, and Portuguese into Nyanja. Like, it's not that easy. And then you've got literacy rates too, even with the written languages, right? Like if you're dealing with low literacy rates, you can't just turn guides into, you know, written documents and expect people to increase their awareness. That's not going to happen. And so it's time intensive, the work that we need to do. And it's very, community by community. And again, this goes back to trust, right? So, and you can look at mobile money as an example, right? If we want to get legal information out to communities, we would have to get somebody who speaks the language to go to those communities. Now, if you can get somebody who is part of that community to do it, it's a whole nother level, right? And so with mobile money, the thing that made the difference was having agents who were part of the community that would be set up in those communities, and people trusted them because they were like, well, I know this person, he's my neighbor. So if he's telling me that I can put my money on here and it'll go to another phone, I can trust him. And so it's really hard in a Pan-African situation like we are, but we're trying to build trust. We're trying to build trust by the people who could be future clients or lawyers who would work with us, or how do they trust that when I give them a name of another lawyer that they're good? Like, we have to build that trust. And so some of that is just our brand, like letting people know what we do, letting people know that we care about what happens in Africa, that we are committed to its economic growth, and seeing, what works and taking that. And so, I mean, yes, there are differences. Like, yes, I can talk about Zambia, but I think these specific things happen everywhere. It's just that you need to understand that it won't be Nyanja in another country. It will be another language that people are using. But the struggles are the same. The resource issues are the same. The access to, internet and electricity are the same. Maybe not all the solutions will be the same, but understanding those barriers is the way that you can start to really pull them down. And so I hope that answered your question, Mary.
I just have one more thing, Mary. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to say also, it's recognizing where things exist that we don't need to enter that space. So I'm going to give a huge shout out to Kenya again, because the legal tech space in Kenya is phenomenal. There's tons of actors in it. They're doing amazing things. Kenya's laws are incredibly easy to find. I'll give the shout out to Nigeria as well. Nigeria does an exceptional job with this. They do a lot of tech work. Cote d'Ivoire does things in Francophone Africa that no other Francophone Africa country is doing. Senegal, I'll give a shout out to our home country. They do a ton of things that no one else is doing. The entrepreneurship in Senegal is almost unmatched anywhere in the continent. And so you have to also, as you're entering all these countries, you got to recognize what's already there. I personally have no desire to really go hard into Kenya and Nigeria right now, because there are Kenyans and Nigerians who are doing a hell of a lot better job at that than I will ever do. And I'm not saying I don't want to work in those areas. I'm saying I'm going to leave that to them in the legal tech space. But then at the same time, I know countries like the Gambia, I know countries like Liberia, Guinea. They don't have that robust legal tech space, and they get left behind a lot because Kenya is such a dominant country, because Nigeria dominates all of West Africa, because Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal and the Francophone get the attention. Other small countries get left behind, and that is where I do think that Africa as a bloc can do much better than Africa as individual 54 countries. And I really think the small countries have the most to benefit from that, but it's recognizing where their strengths are too. There are things that the Gambia does that nobody else can do. It's easier to deal with the Gambia than any other country I've been in because it's so small. And so I think it's figuring out where those strengths are and then sort of meshing it all together and staying in our lane, because my lane is not going to be the Nigeria legal tech space. I can tell you that right now.
And thank you so much. And you've given me so many examples of different countries. And I think Andrea doesn't want to make some people feel left out, but Meghan is just like, yeah, it's this one, this one, this one, this one. I love that. And I want to, you mentioned before, Meghan, about meeting so many people, many African people, young people who want to be human rights lawyers and everything. And I just want to hear from you. Do you think that one of the problems we have in African nations is that we do not have the right laws, or that we don't know them? And if we don't know them, obviously, then we're not able to implement them. Do you think that when you compare people living in the US and people living in African nations, do you think African people are conversant with what we deserve, what we need? It doesn't matter if it's labor laws or whatever. What is the problem? Do we have the laws, or we don't have them, or we have them but we don't implement them properly? What's the issue?
This is a phenomenal question. And it is, I cannot even begin to make a stereotypical reaction to that, because it will vary tremendously based on the individual person. Because I say that particularly in cities, I think Africans are actually more aware of their rights in cities than anyone in the United States. I don't think people give the United States a whole lot of credit. Our education system is not the best. And I would say Europeans definitely know their rights very well. They're really big about the teaching that in school, making sure you know what your human rights are. I give tons of credit to Europe for that. The United States does not do that. We're not big on you must know your rights, besides the First Amendment of the Constitution. Yeah. Outside of that, we fall off. And I would say Africans in general in cities that I've met, young people will know, I saw that this act, here in Senegal, you'll hear the Prime Minister has pushed this act and now we all know what our rights are and we're going to go on the street and fight for it, even if we don't know if that's a legal thing that we can actually implement. There's this contradiction, right? Yeah. But then you go, again, having gone to the villages and out in the up country, I mean, they don't care. Why do I need to know what the law is? Traditional law, I'd say a lot of countries still have customary law. Yes. Gambia, for example, customary law is built into their constitution. And so what happens in land and family and things out in the villages, that's governed by your village elder. It's in your customary law. That's not going to go to the court system. So there's no reason for them to need to know the court system. And part of the work I did was trying to say no, but there's also the Women's Act, which says that women have these rights, and it doesn't look like you're getting that. There's a Children's Act that says the children have free education, which Yahya Jammeh at the time had not told all of the villagers. So they thought they had to keep paying school fees for public schools that were supposed to actually be free. And so things like that, I think there needs to be huge inroads. I personally also believe, I don't think everyone needs the knowledge of a lawyer. I think that if customary law is working for you and that is what is and that's what you understand, then that is yours. Let that be yours. I'm not going to come and say you must know this piece of law and you must fight for this right. But I would say the knowledge varies tremendously. I think what Andrea was touching on in the written language is a huge issue, because how do you teach laws? You want to put it into local language, because then you can meet people where they're at. But if it's not a written language, it becomes incredibly challenging to do that. And so I think there's, again, technology, you'll see a shift in this. So I can't make a generalization of that to answer that. I will say I do think across the board, the youth are becoming way more aware of the laws and what their rights are than any of the elders that I've seen.
Yeah, and it's the same thing in Kenya, and I'm not there right now, but I've been on the streets protesting in Kenya when I've lived there, and I've also been seeing over the last few years, a lot of young people have been saying, because what happened with the protest there, the Finance Bill 2024, just a few years ago. Yeah. And many young people, Gen Z, were talking about how they did it, and they said, we had to sit with our parents and the elderly and tell them this is how things should go, because the Constitution says this and this and this. They have content creators saying exactly how they did this. So we took, I say we, even though I'm not there, because I do my own part. I digitally educate people as well, and also here in schools. But they said that we had to educate ourselves, and we had to intentionally go out there and educate older people and younger people as well. And this is very different from, I know I'm a millennial, but this has been one of the things that makes us different from previous generations. And I think
100%. But you're also Kenyan, Mary, and so I will also say, when people ask me why Senegal, my husband's from Senegal, so that's why Senegal, number one. But number two is because Senegal, you will see the youth here fight their government. You will see when their last president tried to add time to their constitution, and Hawa will say the same thing. The youth took to the street, not just took to the street, they burned the street down. I mean, they said no. And you do not, that is something that, having come from Uganda most recently, is so refreshing. I seek out countries where the youth will go to the street and protest because I want to live in a place where the rule of law is respected. and they're making sure that the rule of law is respected.
Yes.
And when I was my children love Uganda with their whole heart and soul. They wanted to stay there for the rest of their lives. And if you ask me why I'm not living in Uganda right now, it's because Uganda is a repressive regime that is not going to be able to give you that space. It's not going to hold the rule of law like you can find in other countries, like Senegal.
So now we're going to have the difficult questions, because a lot of people are watching this and they're, we are anti-colonialism, we are anti-Western, the Western nations shouldn't influence us, the East shouldn't influence us. So I want to know, what would you tell these people? Because some of them are going to be looking at this and thinking, oh my God, there's this white saviorism. Why do people from America, from the US, to be very specific, why do people from the US think that they know better than us? Why are they here, trying to teach us? I can already tell, because if your family is living there, your children are from that specific African nation, then you want them to have an amazing life because that's their nation. So I can understand that. But I think generally, how do you deal with people not trusting you because people are tired of white saviorism? And yeah, just give us an honest, and I want to hear from both of you, Meghan and Andrea. How do you deal with this?
I'll go first. Okay. So I think, yeah, it's a totally legitimate, concern, and something that I understand everybody could feel about it. And sometimes I feel almost embarrassed to be working on behalf of Africa for the reason that I don't want to be seen like that. And so one of the things that I would say is that I'm not trying to put myself forward as an expert in anything. I'm not. I know that. And so the principles of what we're doing here at Yamalé is that we are trying to source all of the expert information from actual experts on the continent. And we have lots of connections to other Americans who have worked in this space forever, but those are not the people that we're working with. We're building new connections with new communities and new people who are working in those spaces and come from those countries and have the years of experience and the understanding that I don't have. And so I don't ever want anybody to think that I'm trying to act like I have all that, because I know that I don't, and I never will. I won't. I'm not an African national. I never will be able to embody that knowledge, that tradition, that history that comes with generations of growing up and living, and ancestors who have taught you things. And so what I can say is that as an American, I bring a little bit of outside perspective. I can see things that work and don't work. I can add value in certain spheres. And one of the things that Americans are super good at is efficiency. Super good at efficiency. And so when I look at AI, I see efficiency. And that is one of the reasons that we want to bring that technology, is because we want to give that efficiency to and make people trust that can make their lives better and faster and make them more money because they're able to see more clients or do more work or expand faster. We bring a little bit of insight in that way, but in no way do I ever think that my perspective will overshadow the other perspectives. So it's a super valid question. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
I have a question, because you mentioned AI, and that's a very touchy topic to people in the social impact space. Because again, I'm Kenyan, and I know how people content, let's just talk about the whole tech space generally. There's a lot of abuse happening there. I talk about it on my page. You see it. So I know, because you've mentioned the good side, but how do we deal with the bad side? Because technology is amazing, but how do we create these technologies, and how do they affect us as African people? So how would you advise us to protect ourselves and to know the limits? Because not everything is a good thing just because it's coming from somewhere else. And so just comment on the abuse we've seen on the continent with technology. And you could talk about anything, because we know it's happening in the DRC. We know it's happening in Kenya. We know it's happening in India as well, in the tech space. So comment on that.
So I think that I understand that there are so many issues related to AI that not even all of us can grasp, and technology. I'll talk about two things. One of them is just data sovereignty. And we are trying, as we build our own platform, to ensure that we take all of the best practices into account and look at the laws. Like the most stringent laws for data privacy right now, we believe are out of Kenya. And so that is what we're trying. I don't know how this keeps happening, but we're trying to adhere to those strictest policies. Obviously, there are things that we haven't even considered that we might be problematic right now, but we will deal with them when they come. But at this point, we're trying to do the best that we can to protect all of our clients and protect the actual information that we're putting on the internet. The other thing that's super interesting that I would advise all African businesses to think about is that the more that we build, and this goes to Hawa's thing about not being digitized, like the more that we digitize, the more that we build, the more weight that we put into all of the information that is online. And so the tools that are being built right now are taking the data that has been most digitized, which might be American or European or Indian, and that is what it's pulling all its information from. So Africa is at a structural disadvantage in those spaces because there's going to be the bias that all the information is coming from these Western nations or whoever is putting the most volume on there. And so just by us putting the laws online, we believe that we're starting to give weight to Africa as a framework, as a place that has important information, important precedents and laws and strategies and policies that can make a difference in the world. But if we're not online, the technology and the AI is never going to see that. And so not just us, but I would encourage other people to build and make that presence out there, because that's what's going to change the structure and hopefully help counterweight the bias that is already in all of the technology. I'll stop there.
And Hawa, I'm going to ask you a question, and it's connected to what Andrea just said. So what was preventing other countries from doing what you're doing? Do you see yourselves as pioneers? And why are others not doing it?
Yeah, I do see ourselves as pioneers, and it's not like other countries are not doing it. I feel like when we started, whenever we talk to a lawyer from a country or someone we can partner with, I think that the ideas we had were not all of them were innovative. It was like, yeah, I've thought about doing that for my country. Oh yes, we've tried it and it failed here and there. I think that what we are bringing is doing it for the whole continent, thinking about it in terms of bringing the continent together, because what we're trying to instill is really doing business amongst ourselves, right? So I don't want to focus just on knowing what's happening in Senegal. We want to make sure that when it comes to trade and laws, the lawyer in Senegal knows what's happening in Kenya, the lawyer in Kenya knows what's happening in Uganda, from just looking at our platform or like resources online, right? So I think that's the perspective that is different. Other than that, we have talked to a lot of people that have thought about having, for example, the laws online. The things that we see that are missing is maybe the legal framework that will accompany them doing anything online. We have even heard that in some countries, they're not really interested in having their laws online and being viewed by everyone. So I think that is like our niche, making sure that everything is available and it's available to everyone. And people, and campaigning so that people know that this resource is available, and we're opening it up to everyone. And it's free for you to consult actually the laws online. So I think that is like what we are bringing. What we are bringing to the table. I know, Mary, that you have a question for Megan and Andrea about, being in this business. I'm gonna let Megan talk, but I would like to come back to that if possible. Over.
Hawa, putting me on the spot. That's back to the question on why am I not a white savior coming in here? Yes. I would say, first of all, I have zero desire to save anyone. I am not the expert, as Andrea said, at all. I am, as I said at the beginning, I identified frustrations that I had in actually practicing while practicing here. And this entire thing really started as a, let me just try to fix those little issues within my legal practice to make my life easier. And then I realized, oh, actually, if I fix those legal problems for me, probably the other lawyers in my law firm could use that. And then probably other lawyers could use that too. And I think, like I said, I've been in Colombia. If I was living in Colombia right now, I would also be doing the same thing there. There's 2 or 3 of the same things we're doing for Yamalé that I've already told friends in Colombia. We could be doing this here too. And there's models, again, and I am more than anything on a campaign to like detach from my home country, detach the lawyers from having to rely on New York all the time, detach Africans from thinking we gotta always use those guys on the outside, which includes myself. But at the heart of why I actually am here is because this is my children's home. And we asked them when we got, USAID got abruptly shut and my entire career flipped. I said, where do you guys want to go? Do you want to go home to mommy's, to Denver, to US? And both my kids were like, nope. My husband said, absolutely no way. And so we relocated to Senegal. And so now that I'm here living in Senegal, my children will tell you, if you ask them where they're from, they'll tell you Denver, because I don't think my son even knows that, United States is a country. Senegal is their home. Senegal is where their heart is. That's where my husband's heart is. And they followed me all around the world for USAID. And now I have come to the place that all 3 of them chose to live. And so while I'm here, I'm working on the things that gave me frustration last time I was here. And those are the things that I'm really focusing on. I'm not here. There's so many other people who are more talented than I am that are from Senegal and should be handling all the other issues. I just am trying to fix one thing that I identified for myself here.
Wow. And now I'm going to ask you another question, and this is for everyone. Do you feel you can do more for Africa now with the Yamalé, or do you think you did more with USAID? Which one?
I'm gonna answer this first because my colleagues will say something more PC. Absolutely, 100%, without a doubt, we are doing more for Africa than I ever would have done in USAID.
Wow, well, that's a good thing. That's an amazing thing. And now I'm going to ask another question. I
want
to answer that. Everyone. Andrea, Hawa.
Okay.
Hawa.
All right. So this is my perspective. Every time we have, sometimes when we have this conversation, we are just thinking about how things are aligning in what we do. I feel like there's a wave, a shift that is happening in Africa. We talk a lot about sovereignty right now. I think that by USAID leaving, countries, people, organizations are finding resources and are realizing how much they can do on their own, right? I think that because of that, I think that the new generation of leaders we are seeing emerge is a different type of leaders everywhere. I have seen countries say no to the USA recently, which is amazing, right? So there is a shift, and we are on that wave, supporting that shift. That's how I see us. When it comes to the work we do, really, we are not coming and telling people what they need to do, right? They are coming with a decision that they have made about their country, about their resources, about their people, and we are there to support that decision they have made, right? Niger is thinking about changing their mining laws because, it is at their disadvantage. We are there to support that work, right? That's what we do. We're not here to say, okay, you need to look at your education plan. You want to regulate education? We will help you, we'll support that work, implementing, the decision that you want to make for your country at that time. That's what we are doing. We're not making decisions for these countries.
Yeah, I love that, Hawa. Thank you. I think that we are doing something totally different. And like Hawa said, there's no other ulterior motive or interest in what we're doing. We're doing everything that we do to support Africa and to support African growth, which USAID couldn't say. And I love that. And I also think that when we came up with this idea, one of the principles that we had was that we don't want to bring outsiders in to try and solve African problems. And that is something that USAID routinely did. And when everything's said and done and everybody leaves, there's not the same sustainability or effectiveness as when Africans are, solving those problems and resolving those issues on their own. And so that is something that I love, that we hold close at Yamalé, that we are not going to hire expats. We're not going to bring in outside organizations. We are going to work with Africans for Africa. And that's not something that USAID could say. And so that is why I think that our model is so different and can have such tremendous benefit.
Amazing. And you know what? I also want to hear a bit about Mohammed. Is Mohammed the first person who started all this? Who decided? Did you just all come up? You did.
Yes, but with Mohammed, let me give a great background on Mohammed, and I will tell you, Mohammed Kebe is the most fantastic boss you will ever have in your life. He treats every single one of his attorneys. He's the managing partner of, like I said, one of Senegal's biggest law firms. He treats every single person from the top lawyer down to the woman cleaning your desk with the absolute same respect. And he will give his whole heart and soul to his team. And so let me just start by saying that. So with that in mind, when my family made this decision, we want to move back to Senegal. I said, well, then I'm going to have to get a job in Senegal. And since I had been working at the law firm and staying in contact and still working closely with Mohammed on some side projects, I reached out to him and he said, come home. Like, we'll find something to do, come home. And I said, all right, like that seems pretty confident. He's like, don't worry about it. And then he called me back about a week later and he said, you know what? I really thought about this. I don't want you to come work at the law firm again. I want you to do the thing that we've been talking about for 10 years about doing, because we've been talking about this since I worked here a decade ago. And it was this idea, again, that he wanted to go to the other side and say, on behalf of his government, I'm here with the same fervor and the same knowledge as the other side of the table. And so it started from that. And then these ladies were gracious to hear my insane ideas, because some of our ideas are more ambitious than I would like to admit. They are incredibly challenging. This is not easy work. And so these two have let it become a lot bigger. Mohammed is still our board chair. We also have a 2-entity structure. So we have a nonprofit that we hope to fund with our for-profit. And he's the board chair of that, and he's still actively engaged in everything that we do. And it gives a tremendous amount of guidance, but he's still the managing partner of his law firm at the same time. And so you can imagine the time commitment is challenging to balance. But he will forever, the birth of the seed of this idea was from Mohammed, and conversations he and I had all the way back when we represented, a large oil company in their negotiation with Senegal.
That everything you said about Mohammed made me feel so emotional. And I think it's because when I saw you commenting on LinkedIn, and I decided the first thing I normally check where they work and who they're working with, because Mohammed was one of the first people I saw. And when I saw Mohammed, I didn't just see, because before I was seeing a person of European ancestry in African business. But when I saw Mohammed and I could see the power he exudes, and I could see the leadership. And then that made me feel a bit more comfortable. And then I saw everyone else. And I was like, everyone like Hawa, and everyone was like, well, you know what? Okay, this is amazing. And this is why I brought up Mohammed's name, because I think he should be honored as well, because
100%. And let me say one more thing to honor him, actually.
Yes.
The reason I love working with Mohammed is because he is Senegalese through and through. He has, gone and done school in London, done some school in France. He has always worked in Senegal. And he has colleagues and friends who have gone out all over the world, Some of his closest friends have worked for the United Nations and for large law firms in other countries, and they've gone out and lived other places. Mohammed is Senegalese. This is his home. This is where he has worked. This is what his entire life is Senegal, and Senegal will always come first for him. No matter, he can travel all over the world, which he has done, he will always be Senegalese, and he will always work for Senegal.
I love it. I love it. You have an amazing leader. He sounds he's not a leader. He sounds like a person who's everyone's friend. So
Yeah.
I hope I meet Mohammed someday. We've
Of
really
course.
talked about him. And now I have a few more questions. Number one, because this is we're trying to build Africa together and not like you're doing. And I want to know from you what you think the African Union and our own respective African leaders, what do you think they should do to help make this dream that you've envisioned and you've started become a reality? What is their role in this? Do they have a role even? Anyone can answer that. I don't have anyone. I don't know anyone should answer this.
I think that the African Union can help facilitate all of this. I feel like it's about facilitating, like you mentioned earlier, Mary, like the trade corridors, the Pan-African ideals where everybody can work together to accomplish these things. And one of the things that's been really interesting that we've seen recently is all these visa requirements coming down in different countries. And I think that is like just a first step, right? That like if people can start moving freely across borders, then we become one nation, one group of people who all respect each other. It gets away from those ideas of like xenophobia and the otherness. Like if we can start feeling like these countries that are next to us are real neighbors and real partners in development, I think that that will help progress the whole continent and really push everybody forward. And so all of the leaders of all of the countries, the more that they can do to make it feel like we're all in this together, is I think the best thing that anybody can do.
Good, amazing. Yeah, and thank you for mentioning the border thing, because I think Kenya is also one of the leaders in that. I'm not going to brag, but I think it's an amazing thing. But I do also have, worries about this, because I don't see all other countries, stepping up. And I know it takes time. It's new. Like we said, there's no trust, and we're just starting to build it now. So we're going to give them time. But I think it's a good step to, and then, it's going to make people start seeing each other and understanding that, when I see someone from Senegal or from the Gambia or somewhere else, I can attach them to this talent that I've seen from there. I can attach them to expertise. It's not just an African nation. It's an African nation with people who are building their own respective nations and who can contribute and help us learn something new. So this is one thing I think is going to help when we start, going to each other's countries. But I also want to know, so I know now I hear from you how the AU and our leaders should help this dream come true, but I also want to hear from you. And I want to hear from each and every single person. How do you think we can support your work, or how can we get involved? Just something that everyone can leave here thinking, okay, this is what we need to do. Just each one of you, just tell us how you think we should be involved or contribute to your work to make it easier. Hawa, we can start with you.
Sure. I think that we just need, I feel like what we're doing is so different. People just need to know about it, right? People need to talk about it. It needs to be present everywhere. And I can guarantee you people will use it. I have reached out to a few lawyers online, and honestly, it's like, I send them the information and I get a response like, okay, do you want to tell me more about these tools and about what you do? I have had those responses. Like maybe someone is not on LinkedIn and is not responding for 2 days, but genuinely you see people coming back and saying, can we meet actually to hear more about it? And I truly believe that people will use it, will will use it when I know about it. There's a value add in that we're partnering with people, right? We are partnering with content creators. So there is a way for you to make money out of the platform, right? With content. Oh, I'll let Andrea,
Okay.
that's your passion, so I'll let Andrea talk more about it, but you can do that. And we want lawyers who are good, who do good work, to be highlighted and shown and available for the work the continent is doing. So we are also building a network of lawyers that will be available for the continent. So I'll let Andrea talk more about that.
Thank you, Hawa.
Yeah, thanks, Hawa. I totally agree that I think everything that we are building, we legitimately and sincerely believe that it can help somebody, be it a lawyer or a business person, somebody trying to expand and formalize, somebody trying to cross borders, somebody trying to get more visibility. We even believe that all of that will ultimately help governments create more tax revenue. And so all of that is like an ecosystem that we believe will bring benefit to so many people. So I think we really believe in our products. And so all of the stuff that we're putting on our vault, which is on our platform, as Hawa mentioned, we're creating stuff now, but we are totally open and willing and happy to support other creators. So any content creator who is an expert in any sort of product. So one of the things that is very niche and upcoming right now is blockchain and cryptocurrency. If you're an expert in that in Africa, we would love for you to teach others so that they can become expert and give those services to the world as well. And so we're putting courses on our platform where the majority of the profits are going to go to the content creator, and we hold only a small portion to help support our platform fees. But that is one way that we believe that we can help support other creators and other experts, other lawyers or business people who already have great tools and ideas, to give them a platform to actually give that to the world. And so the more that we can create interest in our platform, the more that we're also able to get those experts out into the world and teaching, and getting recognition and income for all of that information that they have.
Yeah. Okay. And Meghan, while you answer this, I also want you to kind of tell us, because now you've brought in another party or a group of people, content creators and everything. Now we know what's happening with PayPal. I think you all know what's happening with that. We know why they have facing difficulties, with addresses and everything, proving employment, bank statements and everything. So I think this is something that's very pertinent to what you're doing, because you're dealing with people in multiple countries. So I think, Meghan, you now have two questions to kind of, it's very blurry. So try to make that a bit more clear for us, and also tell us how you want us to get involved. So two questions.
And the first question is on how do we make people trust our platform versus the PayPal? Sorry, what's the first?
No. What I meant is that if you're inviting content creators from different countries, we have to remember that if you want to pay them, there's gonna be is it easy for you to do it in Africa? Does it matter? I was just gave PayPal as an example. Yeah.
Okay, great question. So to that point, I will continue to say that if someone out there listening to this could help us solve a payment situation, I would forever be your best friend and will promote your business 100%, because payment is the hardest thing that we do. But as far as paying content creators, us paying them has been quite easy, because we're able to pay through mobile money apps that we have in different countries. So that's, for example, our team that we have who works in different countries, we pay them all through mobile money. And that's worked out for us so far. You can't challenge me yet, because if I don't know if someone comes from a country that we have yet to work with, but we will figure out getting payment to someone else, even if it's a wire transfer from our bank into their bank account in their home country, that we are able to do. Okay. The challenge we have on the payment side is more of us receiving payments from all of the clients all over the continent. That has actually been more of a challenge, because we don't want people to have to pay bank fees and you have to have a credit card and all of these things. And so again, I will continue to put a plea out there. If anyone on the continent is building something that I don't have to have a $5 million minimum to enter into, like Flutterwave, I'm just going to call them out by name, because that's a $5 million barrier to entry. If anyone else on the continent besides them is developing something that unites all of the mobile money apps, please reach out to me because I would love to hear from you. All of us would love to hear from you. And then on the other thing, how you can help us, this is our platform, our for-profit is really built for the community to be an African community. It's almost like a one-stop shop for everybody across the continent, from legal side to the business side, like Andrea said, to the creator side. Come visit the platform and please be honest with us. The same honesty that we're trying to put out to you today, bring it back to us. I want completely honest feedback because we know that this is a platform that we'll have to continue building because it is hard. This is not an easy thing we are doing, and we are not going to get it right every time. And I would beg people to please give us that feedback. Tell us what laws are missing. Tell us when you got a bad answer from something. Be honest with us, and we will be honest right back with you. And we will continue to build as a community.
Amazing. I think, I've learned a lot from all of you. I think those were the closing statements. Unless someone else has something to add.
I'll just say thank you so much, Mary, for hosting us. It's such a pleasure to be able to have these conversations and to talk about what underlies this whole, project that we've been working on. It's been really great to meet you and to be able to have, such a chance to talk about Yamalé. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mary.
Yeah, huge thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you very much.
I wanna close this by just reminding everyone that, I myself, I'm not even in Kenya right now, and I'm always speaking about decolonization and social impact, anti-racism, anti-Blackness, and everything. And one of the reasons I was excited to do this is to remind people that on a regular basis, every single day, people like me, we are working with people from different parts of the world, and not just Finnish people. I meet people from everywhere in the world, and when we speak about decolonizing, it does not mean be there by yourself. You be there by yourself and live separately and never have to do anything together. It's about working together. So, for example, if we have minerals, they need to go somewhere, right? We are not keeping the minerals in one African nation, but how will we move them from one place to another? And we can discuss this, and we can be able to create structures around that to make that there's fairness. And also, we can also still talk about, do we really need to mine there? What are the implications, the health implications? How is it affecting the people in that community? How are we doing this? And we can only do this by working together, not Kenya by themselves and Nigeria by themselves, the DRC by themselves, because we have a lot of gaps. We have educational gaps, we have investment gaps, we have all that. But when we come together, then we're able to see this is happening in this part of Africa, and this is why it's happening. How can we address that and make sure it doesn't happen in the neighboring country? And the best way we can do that is doing what we have in here right now. We have people, we have experts. I know people, you're all very humble. You don't want to call yourselves experts, but we have expertise here. And that's the expertise we need to share between each other. When I'm here in Finland and I'm doing all these things, I am grateful that Finland gave me my education, my bachelor's degree, my master's degree. And they were able to give me also an opportunity to not pay for tuition. Of course, I do pay taxes, so I do pay in that sense. But we have to learn how to work together as a globe. But we have to do it in a way that, especially when we're working in Africa, we have to acknowledge what the history is. We have to understand how it's affecting us today. And we have to change the structures that keep us down. And we have to find a way to elevate ourselves and center African opinions and experiences. And the only way we can do that is by working together. And that's why I was glad that we did this. I wanted to see from you, and I wanted everyone else to see from you how you're working together, so that it inspires them. And another thing I need to mention, and this is Hawa, this is for you. And this is something I like to do, especially when I go to my workshops, when I'm teaching university students. I normally tell them, when you see me here on stage, on the platform, whatever, you will associate African women with intellect, with knowledge, with positivity, with very many things that you would not have done if you didn't see me here yourself. And this is why I specifically wanted to have all of you here. So people will remember that they saw Hawa in a tech leadership position. So Hawa is not there making coffee for people. Hawa is not there, doing all those other things. And there's nothing wrong with making coffee for people, but we are changing perceptions. And I want people to be able to see Hawa doing what she's doing and doing it with people of different races, and to see how you are respected and how you are trusted and the value you bring to this organization. This is the only way we can change the perceptions we have back home, where we think being white is the ultimate goal and that only white people can do A, B, C, D. So I'm really happy to be here in the same room with you, Hawa, so we can make other women and younger people understand that we are not subordinates, we are not less than anyone, we are equals. And many times we are leaders. So I'm really happy to see you, and you brought something more to my life, just having you here. And that's why you were the first person to speak.
Thanks, Mary. Same here. It was really great being here with you.
Thank you so much. So let's keep in touch. I'm going to be following your work. I'm going to be seeing what happens on your platform. I'm a content person as well, so I'm going to be, I'm going to be supporting. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope we can see each other again. You're welcome again. And let's continue building Africa from within. And let's continue using our expertise to make sure that we are best positioned, well positioned to take Africa where it needs to be.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Mary.
Bye-bye.